All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to everybody on Zoom. If you don't know who I am, I'm Joe Thompson. I am chapter president. Thank you, Mike. Put it right at me. Do it, Joe. Do it, Joe. I'd like to welcome guest Jimmy Scruggs from Culture, Texas. Brand new member. Also, if you haven't had a chance to read our newsletter, there's quite a few new members. Bob, I don't know if you ever mentioned them with the meeting. Okay. There's Kyle, Kelly, and Vince. There you are, Vince. Welcome. Brian Alcott, Thomas Bell. That's Mike, we met before. We shared chicken wings. Hey, Vince, if you can remind everybody who your wife, fiance. Yeah. All right. So if you didn't get a chance to come out with us last month, we went to Constellation Field. We had 28 people or something like that showed up to watch the Space Cowboys.
That's the loudest it can get.
Versus the Express. What's that, Dick?
And you're unmuted, so you should be able to talk if you need to. Okay.
All right.
Hearing
Yeah,
aids,
you're not here.
I can't hear them.
Yeah, we can hear you. So we had Mike Capps, who is the radio voice of the Express, and Gerald Sanchez, who has agreed to come speak with us future date. The radio announcer of the Space Cowboys, who also has a U of H connection. So we have that connection together. And Deacon Jones, how is Deacon? By the way,
It's much better. You got a new stint.
Deacon Jones, a lot
Day after his birthday.
new stint.
Deacon again, finally.
Okay.
Year and a half, he rubbed himself hard.
Good. That's good to hear. It's good to hear. So, all right. If you haven't, who plans on going to Baltimore to the convention? A couple of us. All right. I still haven't bought my airplane ticket yet. I've already booked the room, and I've already bought my pass. Early registration is still going on, right?
Right.
All right. So it is August the 17th through the 21st. You get a chance to go to Baltimore, right? Going to the national convention is usually pretty good. If you happen to be there on Friday the 19th, it's the Red Sox versus the Orioles. Plus, you can say happy birthday to Joe, me. Because that'll be my birthday. So we're trying to find a way for my wife to go out there, but we'll see. She says she doesn't like spending a birthday apart from me.
She just never wanted.
Okay. But did you read the thing about vaccination? You got to upload the vaccination card. Yeah. Okay. All right. Marcia's not here. I sent an email out a little while ago. Marcia wants to. I don't know how long she's been the secretary, Bob.
For 3 years.
At least 3 years. Okay. Marcia's traveling. She wants to. She loves coming to the meeting. She enjoys it. But she's asked if somebody can take over for her. So we need a new chapter secretary. Okay. All you got to do is just sit up here and listen to what I have to say, what the speaker has to say, take some notes, and just write up a brief little meeting summary. That's all. That's it. So we would like a new chapter secretary. Anybody would like to volunteer in the next couple of months or so to take over for Marcia? You know, I appreciate Marcia.
Get the rest of those things.
Yeah, what? Exactly. If you haven't had a chance to read the newsletter, the most recent newsletter, it's out there. All of you had a chance to at least look at it. How many have seen the chapter newsletter? All right, online. Okay, I gave my thoughts about the upcoming year. My my sleeper for the year for the Astros is Jose Siri. That is my sleeper. I hope he does well. You know, he scares us half to death when he's on base. Or, you know, but I'm just saying, maybe he's growing a little bit. But that's what I think. I think the club is going to do pretty good. Dirk wrote a great article about the shiftless rules.
Yeah.
And Bill shared his second installment of Conversations with Tal, Life of Tal. The next edition will be in our next newsletter in July. Tony shared with us some of the rules of the new CBA, right?
Very good.
Yeah, great rule. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, please give it a look. Also, we're already, at least I am already thinking about what I'm going to write for the next edition, which will be right around the All-Star game, right, Scott and Tony? Right around the All-Star game. So in July. So please, if you anything, if you want to, you know, the great thing about baseball is that there's always a story out there. There's a story, you know, you've never heard of. I mean, crazy stories happens all the time. What was it yesterday where the Reds found another way to lose? You know, the Reds got no hit, or the Steelers. Wow, the Pirates got no hit, but the Reds still lost. First, Pujols pitch. I saw on Facebook now that Pujols' pitch, he's the best two-way player ever. Whatever. Saw that on Facebook. So, whatever. I mean, you got a memory, you got a story, you got a book. David Jerome right here has a book coming out. What, next month? Over Bill Burton. Is that next month, David?
I don't know. It's not. It's Amazon has changed it to a later date. I haven't heard from McFarland about when the latest published date's going to be. I expect it'll be late summer, early fall.
Wow. Okay.
I wanted it out now, but I'm not sure what the holdup is.
I believe it was a year ago this month that Bill was our guest, right?
It was in May of last year. That's right.
Yeah. So a year ago this month, Bill was our guest here.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Bob was
can.
talking.
You might want to push McFarland, publish it in August, so that it will be available for the SABR convention, and you can have a table there and sell some books.
I would love nothing more than that. I've been trying to push McFarland. They don't like to talk on the phone. They only like to communicate via email, which is, I guess, fine. But it was my understanding last fall that they were looking at a first half of 2022 publication date. And I'm not sure what the holdup is. It's not me, I assure you.
Good.
All right. So again, you have a story you want to share? You have a Milwaukee Brewers story with a Astros connection? Please write it up, send it all. We're always looking for new stories. Ted, write a story? Not yet. You got a story? Or Charlie, right? Or if you have a story about working with Ted, baseball related, hey, share it with us.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
What's the word count on a story for you?
800, 800 words, right, Scott?
It varies, but if you keep them 1,000 words or less, it'd be real helpful. Yeah.
I'm writing a chapter for a book on Mel Wright, the former pitching coach for the Astros, and I wouldn't mind doing a little excerpt from that as a contribution.
Great.
That's good. Yeah. But yeah, hey, we're always looking for new writers. You know, no offense to any of the guys that write a lot, but hey, let's get some new writers. You know, let's get some new stuff. So if you have any ideas, just email me or talk to Tony, Scott. You know, hey,
Just review the 19.
just review the 1922 season. 100, there you go. 100 years ago.
John McGraw Giants, one world.
I don't know.
Spring training in San Antonio.
Leading hitters, leading batters.
Yeah.
They won.
How did Boston do that year?
Great.
Loudly then.
How did the 1922 Houston minor league team do?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, something like that. All right, if you haven't heard, I assume if you were watching the preview just there, the trailer, that was the brand new Nolan Ryan documentary called Facing Nolan. It was previewed in the, let me make sure I get this right, the the South by Southwest Film Festival in January or something, isn't it? Okay. What's that? It's March? March, yeah. It is opening for one day only on May 24th. The show times are going to be 7 or 7:15 p.m. at theaters around town, like Deerbrook, the Woodlands, AMC Willowbrook. You know, there's a few here. So around town. All I could see is it's only going to be available for one day. I don't understand. Does that sound about right, Bill?
It's gonna be streaming after that.
It's going to be streaming after that? Okay.
That is.
Okay. And that's from Fathom Events or something. I don't. Yeah.
We were lucky enough last Tuesday, there was a preview, a trailer, what do you call it, premiere here in Houston. We got a chance to see it. It's well worth the watch. It was awesome.
Laughing and crying.
Yeah. And it sort of chronicles not just Nolan's career, but his life with Ruth, right? Because this is your
Yes, Ruth is a star in it.
because this is their
She's so
this is their 55th anniversary.
She mentioned that last week. She first.
Yeah. At the end of the documentary, supposedly there's a part of it is the Q&A that was done at the South by Southwest with Ryan. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go. It's a Tuesday night, but you know, if you want to watch it in the theater, it's the only chance you'll have. I was talking to Mike and Bob about some possible events for the chapter for the summer, and both of them kind of convinced me that maybe it'd be a better idea to go to another Space Cowboys game as opposed to an Astros game. So what do y'all think? Would you like to have another Space Cowboys day? I got a couple of ideas here. July 8th, 9th or 10th against the Chihuahuas. That's the Padres. That's the Padres franchise. Do you love these names? Or September 16th through September 18th against the Bees. That's the Angels franchise. So, you know, I got some ideas. We can put something together.
Do they know if they started the robo umpires? That officially started, it's supposed to start 15th of May. Did it or not? I don't know.
I don't think it is.
Anybody know?
Does anybody know if the robo umpires have started?
Who would have heard it?
Okay. By the way, if you were at the April game, you also got a voucher for a free game later this season, right? They're giving away the free jersey and a free game. Yeah, I think there was two things there. Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah, the voucher.
So if you happen to get a voucher, then you got a free game voucher too, I think. So, all right. I am pleased to announce our guest of honor tonight, Ted. I've talked with him a couple of times. Ted is you want to introduce him, Charlie?
Sure.
I mean, I can do it, but I mean, I'll just do it from a business perspective, but maybe you know him better. All right. Ted's a baseball historian, wrote a great book. I'm gonna turn it over back here.
Other than that, Ted Meyer is a business side lawyer, and while he was in school, he studied in baseball history. So he is an unofficial baseball historian, but this man knows more about baseball than every individual statistic, which is very proven when you mention who won the 1922 World Series. And right off the bat, this guy was like, boom, what was the team again?
Giants.
The Giants. He knows more than just the stats and the teams. He knows the players, personalities, their roles in all of the teams. This guy's taught me more about baseball in the last few months than I learned leading up to now. So let me give it up for Ted Meyer.
Thank you, Charlie. I'll transition from Nolan Ryan into my presentation. A couple starts ago, Justin Verlander pitched a no-hitter into the 8th inning. He's moving up the list on the most times doing that. Well, Nolan Ryan has done it the most times. He did it 22 times. Nolan Ryan has the most no-hitters, 1-hitters, 2-hitters, and 3-hitters in the history of baseball. Phenomenal. So that's my segue. My day job is representing companies in all things labor and employment. So they bring me in when they have a bad lawsuit. I come in and I try the lawsuit for them, but what they really want me to do is fix the problem, because there's usually a leadership problem, or there's a behavior problem, or there's something like that. So as Charlie said, I've been studying baseball for 35 years. In law school, they say you've got to have a hobby. Mine became studying baseball. I spent time at the Hall of Fame, Giamatti Library. I suggest you all go if you ever get a chance to go there. But so I've had this day job and then I've had this hobby, and they kind of merged about 10 years ago, and realized that there are a number of lessons that we can learn from the great baseball dynasties applicable to our own groups and teams. And so what I do is I go out and I speak to at corporate events. I speak to different business clubs about the baseball dynasties and the takeaways for our modern teams and groups. So I really studied the dynasties. There's a number of great teams. My publisher gave me a page limit, so I had to come up with a test on what a dynasty was. And what I decided was they had to win 2 years in a row. They had to be great for at least 4 years, and they had to be regarded by the historians of their time as a dynasty. Well, I've made a bunch of enemies in the city of Atlanta, Georgia, because they only won one title in 1995. And they were not the best team of their era. The Yankees were. The Yankees team beat them twice in the World Series. So why baseball? What is it about baseball that really resonates with people? And it's amazing. I go out and give speeches, and people come up to me and they remember their favorite Buff Stadium story, or their Astrodome story, or whatever. We use phraseology from baseball. Your ideas on the left field, you really hit the park, etc. What that does, I believe, is that ties us together. Most of us have had baseball in our families for decades, if not centuries. Sport's been around for 200 years. And so when you go out and have lunch with somebody and you say, you really hit it out of the park, what you're really doing is you're connecting at a deeper level with someone, because they all understand what this is. There's a number of reasons in the book that I go through on why baseball is helpful. You fail way more than you succeed in baseball, just like in life. Each year, the odds makers in Vegas try and pick the winners in the various professional sports. They get it right way more often in football and basketball than they do in baseball, just because baseball is the one for me. So the first team I want to talk about is the 1995 to 2000 Yankees, the Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera team. I think the most interesting story from that dynasty is the story of Joe Torre, their manager. Joe Torre was a great player. Larry remembers him. He won the MVP in 1971. He went on to become a very good manager. He managed the Mets, the Braves, and the Cardinals, but he was fired from all three jobs. And as of his last firing of those three, he had held the dubious distinction of the most games played and managed combined of someone who had not made a World Series. And this bothered me. This bothered Joe. And so this brings us up to about 1995. And his wife came up to him one day and said, "Joe, there's something about you I don't know. There's something about you that you're not telling me. It's getting in the way of us. It's holding you back, I think." And she got him to go to one of these married couple seminars where people go to a Holiday Inn and they stand up and they tell life stories in front of complete strangers. And that's what they did. And Joe Torre stood up and told a story about how his father used to abuse his mother. He had never talked about it before. His father was a New York police detective, and he was a very large, intimidating man. And Joe and his brothers, who were also big athletes, couldn't do anything about it. So Joe Torre never learned how to confront. He would come home from school on his bike, and if he saw his dad's car in the driveway, he would just keep going. He just never learned to confront. Well, this revelation opened him up, and he started talking about this issue and this problem. And he got over it. He got through it. In 1996, as you know, the Yankees went to the World Series. And so they're up against the Braves, the aforementioned Braves, and they lose the first game 12-1 to Smoltz. And after the game, George Steinbrenner comes into Joe Torre's office and he says, "Must win game tomorrow." Joe Torre doesn't even look up from his desk. He said, "George, you should be prepared to lose tomorrow too. We're up against Greg Maddux, but we're going to go back." And actually, the first two games were in New York. We're going to go back to Atlanta and we're going to win this World Series in 6 games. Okay. So we get to, sure enough, in game 2, Maddux shuts them out 4-0. So they're down 2-0 going back to Atlanta for the World Series. And they get up 2-0. They're in the 6th inning. And Fred McGriff is up for the Braves. They've loaded the bases. And Joe Torre goes out to the mound to confront his pitcher, David Cone. Now remember, he was not very good at confrontation. But this is the picture. And this is Joe Torre looking David Cone right in the eye. And what he says is, "This is very important. I need the truth from you. How do you feel?" And this is one of those moments that we Astros fans, we know that the series is hanging in the balance. It's just game 3 in the 6th inning. But so the Atlanta crowd is just going crazy around this. And Torre is right up, short declarative sentences, very calmly says to David Cone, "How do you feel?" And Cone says, "Well, I think I'm okay. I can get him out with my flight or whatever." Joe Torre takes a step forward, and he's even closer to him than this. And you see there's video of this with their bills of their caps overlapping each other. And Torre says, "This is very important. I need the truth from you. How do you feel?" So Cone said, "I think I can get him out." Well, he did. And as we all know, the Yankees went on to win the World Series. And Joe Torre, he was age 55 at this time, completely transformed himself as a leader after that. He was able to deal with that one thing that had been really, I mean, he'd been great. He got a great baseball career, pretty darn good manager even before then, but he wasn't his best because there's one thing he had to confront. And I see that with my clients, in my cases, that's often the problem. Is somebody at a high level has got something going on in their life that they're not dealing with. And when you're in a position of great power, that can matter a lot to a lot of people. And that's what Joe Torre discovered. So, the lesson is we can change at 55 or 65 or 75 and become better. And that's what Joe Torre did. So people say to me, "Well, okay, this book's about dynasties. Isn't it just about the Yankees?" There's 5 Yankee teams referenced in the book. But the most interesting things, one of the most interesting stories about those Yankee teams is why one of the teams fell to earth and then basically went entirely the other direction. And that's the team of the early 60s, Whitey Ford, Mickey Mantle, and Roger Maris. As of 1962, the Yankees had won 20 world titles in 40 years. It was the greatest dynasty run in the history of American professional sports. But in 1963, the Yankees got beat by the Dodgers in the World Series in San Diego Pax. In 1964, they got beat by the Cardinals in the World Series. In 1965, they finished 6th in the American League, which was virtually unheard of. And in 1966, they finished dead last in the American League. So the question is, what happened? Well, I believe there's 3 things that happened. First thing that happened is they failed to embrace a brand new talent, a pool of talented players. They failed to go after black players like at the rate of other teams. They met their match with the Dodgers. They met their match with Bob Gibson and the Cardinals. They almost got beat by the Giants too, with a number of great black players. But the Yankees just didn't embrace that talent pool. They kept going the way they did. They brought in Elston Howard in 1955, but they didn't hire men of color at the rate that other teams were doing it, and they fell behind on talent. So that's number one. Second thing is they didn't react to the changes in the game. The game changed in the 60s. I mean, Larry can tell us this, but it became a more pitching dominated game. became more about defense. If you look at like the 1965 World Series game on MLB Network, you'll see Sandy Koufax standing at the Met in Minnesota on a mound that is at least a foot higher than it is right now. Teams were raising the mound, pitchers were dominating. But the Yankees really didn't adjust. They didn't go after speed. They really didn't focus on pitching that much. It was sort of the same old, we're going to do things the Yankees way, and that didn't work anymore. But I think probably the biggest problem, though, is how the Yankees managed or mismanaged their big star, Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was an alcoholic. And as good as he was, and he is looked at even sort of higher now in an age of sabermetrics because he got on base so long. But Mickey Mantle was a problem. He carried with him all the problems that alcoholics bring. Mixed messages, back chats of leadership. They went through a management change. CBS bought the team. Yogi Berra was brought in as manager. Mantle's old friend. Mantle abused him, talked behind his back. And it just went on and on and on. I mean, there's an example of Mantle being drunk the night before a game, and his handlers get him to the game. They get him into the dugout out on the field for his first at bat. He hits the ball out of the park. He runs to first base, and he just keeps drifting into right field. Yeah, end of game. But that was, and then so there's a group of young players in the dugout, Tony Kubek, Tom Trash, etc. And they think it's hysterical. And they just worship this guy. They think this is how you do it. This is how you become a star. And it really wasn't. They were learning habits and behaviors from Mickey Mantle that weren't the right behaviors and the right habits. And Mickey Mantle was interviewed by Sports Illustrated. He actually did a first-person interview in April of 1994, a year before he died, and said, you know, alcohol really held me back. By then, he'd come to terms with it. He acknowledged his problem, but he said, yeah, I didn't heal quickly. I had problems because I couldn't cover the park. He acknowledged that he wasn't as good because of his drinking, and his drinking was extreme. So what I do in the book is I compare that Yankee example to the Yankee example of Babe Ruth, Jacob Ruppert. In the 1920s, Babe Ruth came into baseball in the 1910s. He was probably the best left-handed pitcher in the American League in the 1910s. Traded, as we all know, to the Yankees. In 1920 and 1921, he probably had the two best offensive seasons in the history of the game in terms of slugging and on-base percentage and so forth. But then he started to go the other way. He started to carouse. He started to drink. He went through, basically turned into kind of what Mickey Mantle turned into. And in 1925, Babe Ruth showed up at spring training weighing 256 pounds, which is 35 pounds over his plane. The Yankees had a horrible season. On August 28, 1925, Ruth comes into the clubhouse 2 hours after the rest of his teammates. He's late. Manager Miller Huggins, who's all of about 5'4", went up to him and said, Ruth, you don't need to get dressed. You're suspended. And you don't need to worry about getting your uniform on. Ruth exploded. Ruth said, I'm going to go to the owner, Jacob Ruppert, and I'm going to go to the press. And that's what he did. He went to the owner, and Jacob Ruppert said, you will remain suspended so long as Miller Huggins wants you to remain suspended. He went to the press, and the same thing happened. Ruppert actually came out affirmatively, proactively, and said, Babe Ruth will remain suspended so long as Miller Huggins wants him to remain suspended. And so Ruth had no other options. And he would come back each day begging to get his job back, and they finally let him back in about 8 days later. But what happened then is that in the offseason, Babe Ruth went out and hired a personal trainer, which in 1925 was not a popular thing to do. And he turned himself around. And between 1926 and 1931, inclusive a period of 6 years, Babe Ruth had the best 6 years of offense that anyone has ever had. Barry Bonds, anyone else. He averaged 50 home runs, 155 RBIs, and hit 347 over a 6-year period. The message obviously is we got to stand up to bullies. And there are bullies in our workplace. There are bullies everywhere. And especially in business, and I have to deal with this myself sometimes with client leaders, but we've got to stand up to them. We got to stop them. Because if a great salesperson or a rainmaker or whatever is allowed to run amok, you start to lose the people you want to keep. and you kind of go the path of the Yankees of the 1960s. So that's the lesson there is you got to stand up to the bullies, and management has to remain aligned when you're dealing with somebody tough like that. And the Yankees did that. Jacob Rupert, I've got a chapter in the book called The Smartest Man in the Room. And it's largely about Jacob Rupert and how he built the Yankees in the 1920s. He established that professional image. He built the stadium. He designed the uniform. He did everything and set the Yankees on course for at least 40 years when they were great. So that's something that people have to deal with a lot. One of the core challenges that I find when I go deal with tough situations with clients is bullying. And it's we just got to stop it. So I studied the Negro Leagues as part of this and came to the conclusion that there were at least 3 dynasties in the Negro Leagues: the Homestead Grays, the Pittsburgh Crawfords, and the Kansas City Monarchs. They were all great teams. Those of you, this group knows Bill James. Bill James rated the all-time baseball players, and he included Negro League players. Ranked number 4th all time is a guy named Oscar Charleston that this group probably knows, but in the other groups I speak to, no one's ever heard of this guy. He was a great player. Number 4, Buck O'Neill saw Willie Mays play and Charleston play, and he said Charleston was a little better. He was that good. But there were a number of players in the Negro Leagues who were very, very good. And baseball finally got much better in the 60s and 70s because we finally integrated and we got better. But there's a big discussion in the book about diversity and inclusion. And most of us know now that diversity and inclusion are good things. I'm not sure we understand why it's good. And that's what I really take head on in the book. And basically it's without it, we basically fall into the concept of groupthink. When we face a problem, everybody has the same answer. There's no creativity. Whereas if we have a diverse group in the room, we're more likely to come up with a better, higher solution because of it. And that's what happened to those teams that integrated quickly. The Dodgers and the Giants, Pirates, and those teams. The National League did much better than the American League. But back when there was a period in the 1950s when the MVP in the National League, 9 out of 11 times was a black player. And they just came in and they were just great. And they raised the game. They raised the teams. The teams that had them did better. So one of the questions I'm asked is, what management style is best? Is it players manager? Is it hard guy? What is it? And my answer to that always is, it's an authentic guy, somebody who is himself. We have one of the most authentic managers, Larry Dierker, that I ever saw. Just you and yourself all the time. And the example in the book is Casey Stengel, who managed the Yankees in the 1950s. You remember he was the author of Stengelese. He'd say things like, "There comes a time in every man's life," and I've had plenty of them. And he was always himself. One time he went out to the mound, one of his pitchers was having trouble, and the pitcher scowled at him and said, "I'm not tired." And Stengel said, "Well, I'm tired of you." I mean, that's what it was. He was funny. And the message here is not only authenticity, but humor really plays an important role in teams and groups. He was funny. Now, not everybody liked him. DiMaggio didn't like him. A lot of the players didn't like him. But he was a really good baseball guy and a great leader. And he won. And his Yankee teams won. So, the authentic leadership style is what works. So let's see. Is there anything else that I missed there, Charlie?
I usually go into the ribbon sheets going key rows.
So one of the questions I'm asked is, how important is getting along? How important is it to be popular? How important is good chemistry? And what I learned in studying these dynasties, it's really not that important when you look at things. There's a number of examples of the dynasties. In fact, really all the dynasties had big problems with players getting along. The early 20th century Chicago Cubs may have been the best team of all time. They were World Series champions in 1907 and 1908. They were great from 05 to 1910. And they had the great double play combination of Tinkers to Evers to Chance, the old Franklin P. Adams poem that we all remember. They got into a fight in 1905 over cab fare and didn't speak for 32 years. Shortstop, second baseman, great double play combination. Through the dynasty period and for 30 years after. I interviewed a guy named Bob Locker who played for the Charlie Finn, the Oakland A's. And he recalls specifically pulling players off Reggie Jackson in the clubhouse and pulling Reggie Jackson off other players. They fought all the time in the clubhouse. The Reds, Rose and Bench didn't get along for part of the time they were together. In just about every dynasty, there's specific examples of people that didn't get along. Key was they all rose above it and fought for the greater good because it was all about winning. And so they got over it. They didn't try and work it out because it was never going to get worked out, but they just dealt with it. So let's talk about those Reds. The Cincinnati Reds of the 1970s were a great team. Big Red Machine. They went to the World Series in 1970. They went to the World Series in 1972 and they didn't win. They weren't great really until later in the decade. And I believe that they went through an experience as a team that sort of put them over the top. That occurred in the 1973 National League Championship Series against the New York Mets. It's in Shea Stadium. The Mets come out in the press and they call the Reds chokers, and Pete Rose doesn't take kindly to that, so he decides to do something about it. In one of the games, he takes out Bud Harrelson at second base. There's this brouhaha on the field. The bench is empty. That's back when the players used to really fight when they came out there. So there was this big brouhaha in the middle of the field. The Reds went out in the field in the next half of the inning, and they actually had to pull them back off because Rose was pelted with everything from beer bottles, whiskey bottles, nuts and bolts, fruit and vegetables. It was unbelievable. So they had to pull the team off the field, and it took 15 minutes to get him back on. In the next game, Rose hits a home run in the 12th inning, runs around to win the game, and runs around the bases doing this, and all that stuff came flying in the back end. And so it comes down to game 5. It's a 3-5, and the last game was in New York at Shea Stadium. And the Mets are going to win. They're ahead 62 at the top of the ninth. There's 1 out, or actually 2 outs, and this is what happens.
Swung on, hit on the ground, clear. Miller has the ball. It's going to the pennant, and this is a wild scene. Fans are pouring out onto the field. A mad scene at Shea Stadium as the New York Mets have won the National League pennant.
Anybody see who was on first base for the Reds? Pete Rose. He was out in the middle of the field, in the middle of that crowd. And what happened was Johnny Bench yells, "Everybody get a bat." Players got bats. And they went out there, and there's some examples of 4 young kids who took bats to the shins from Johnny Bench. They went out and they got Pete Rose and they got him back to safety. Now, before that last half of the inning, the Reds were so concerned about the crowd that they had taken their families, the wives and families who normally sit behind the dugout, out, down the steps, out through the dugout into the clubhouse, because they were afraid they were going to get hurt. So that caused a big situation. The Mets fans figured out where the Reds team bus was, and they started tipping it, almost tipped it over. Some guy brought a bugle to the game and was playing taps, so it was awful. And obviously the Reds lost. But they went through a crisis together, and it brought them closer. And there's something about that, getting through a crisis, that can bond a team and be the one ingredient that can make the difference. And we have crises in our workplaces. We have pandemics, we have hurricanes, we have all kinds of issues and problems. And there is opportunity in crisis. As leaders, we navigate through, kind of just power through and keep the group together. It could become a very defining event for the team. So that's the Cincinnati Reds, and I will say that they were so good. They were by far the best team in the 1970s. They won over 60% of their games, but our esteemed leader went 9-9 against them in the 70s with an ERA of less than 3.5. So, and not very many people did that. It was actually one of the best jobs that anybody did against the Reds. And I don't know what your secret was, but they pretty much dominated. Sparky Anderson is a great manager. There's a lot in the book about Sparky Anderson. He came to Cincinnati and nobody had ever heard of him. But he came in and managed to get the respect of the clubhouse. Like I said, Rose and Bench didn't get along. Perez was there. Morgan came a little bit later. And he ended up sort of moving them all to different corners of the clubhouse. He kind of created a corner office concept. They're all alpha. You know, they all wanted to be in charge. And that way he was saying to the masses, hey, given where I put these guys, they're all leaders. All four of them are equally important. And like I said, there were fights on that team that he had to deal with. He told Rose, he got on Rose for his philandering on the road, not to make Rose change his ways, but because he was worried about the wives of the other players and how they must feel knowing that Rose was doing it. I mean, he thought through all that and gave that kind of direction to his team. So Reds, a marvelous team. The one core thing about all dynasties is they all had an under the radar player that was fantastic. It would rise up in key situations. Think Yuli, I guess, with us, not really recognized as a star, but kind of subordinates his game to everybody else. And I met a number of these people along the way, but by far the most fascinating player I met along these lines was a guy named Bobby Brown, who played for the Yankees in the 1940s and 1950s. He was someone who always seemed in my studies, he was always getting big hits at the end of the season and in the World Series. And I looked it up and God, he's second best all time in batting average in World Series at 439 to this day, second only to Big Papi Ortiz. And he would get big hits and big moments. Stengel platooned him at third base. And it was just fascinating. So I had to find out more about this Bobby Brown. So I looked into him and found out that while he was playing for the Yankees, he was also going to medical school. And he went to medical school at Tulane in the off season. He never went to spring training. So he never got the benefit of the spring training ramp up. And but by the end of the year, he was this great player. So he's going to medical school. He decides at age 29, he's going to retire. He goes and serves his medical residency. And then he also goes to Korea. He's a battalion surgeon in Korea for 17 months, right in the middle of his career. Just a fascinating man. After his medical training, he became a cardiologist in Fort Worth for 25 years. And then, as some of us know, he then became president of the American League for 10 years. But he was a winner. And the one thing that he did above everything, I believe, is he learned to conquer fear. I mean, he went up against Bob Feller before there were batting injuries. And then he learned to operate on injured soldiers on the front lines. And then he was a cardiologist. And he just had a way of conquering fear. And there's something of that in all these dynasty teams. They get over that. They get over the nerves and fear, and they're able to power through. But I had to meet Bobby Brown. And by sort of sheer force of luck, I was able to connect with his family in Fort Worth. And I got to meet him when he was 95 years old. And I went in, and I will never forget meeting Bobby Brown. I've met presidents, I've met all sorts of amazing people. And the presence that man had was unbelievable. I mean, he was kind to me. He had unflinching integrity. He was patient. He told me Joe DiMaggio stories. He told me Mickey Mantle stories. He told me Jackson Robinson stories. Told me Yogi Berra stories. He came up with Yogi Berra from Newark to the Yankees in 1946 together. They were roommates. And so he is kind of the definitive source on which Yogi-isms are really Yogi-isms. And one of his favorites is as they were rooming together, Bobby would read medical texts and Yogi would read comic books. And as Yogi would snap off the light, he would say, "How'd yours turn out?" That was it. You know, he talked about the amazing professionalism of the Yankee teams. They won 5 in a row. They're the only team to win 5 titles in a row between 1949 and 1953. And he said there was no bat flipping, there was no yelling of the other team. He said the level of professionalism on that team was absolutely amazing. So I tried to get him to talk about himself. And he just wouldn't do it. I'd get him to say, "Well, how'd you do that in the World Series game?" He said, "Well, just waiting for a good pitch to hit. I swung as hard as I could." That's what he said. And you know, just couldn't really get him to talk much about himself. I knew his high school team was really good. He had a great high school team in California that won 2 titles in a row. When he came out in 1941, he was probably the top prospect in the country. But he said, well, you know, we were a good team. One time we beat Cal, it was a college team. We had this pitcher named Sheehan, who almost never lost. He's really good. So I went back and I looked up Sheehan. He said the thing about him is he was killed in the war. And it was just, he kind of said it kind of in an odd way. I went back and I found out about Sheehan. Well, what I learned is that Arthur Edmund Sheehan Jr. was a staff sergeant waist gunner in the U.S. Army Air Corps, World War II, and he served his country in the 360th Bomber Squadron Group, 303rd Bomber Unit, and was shot down over Suffolk in Germany, September 28th, 1944. Bobby Brown wanted me to talk about this. I mean, I truly believe that this person and others, he wanted me to write about it. And when I came out to speak, he wanted me to talk about it. So that's what I'm doing. Part of my motive in writing this book overall is that these baseball stories are going to die unless we sort of keep them alive. And that's what this group does. But the baseball publishing industry is dying. And so my creative way to navigate around that was to basically write a business, but use the baseball stories. I met Connie Mack's grandson. Connie Mack managed the Philadelphia A's from 1900 to 1950. He won more games, managed more games, and lost more games as manager than any manager in history. He managed 7,792 games and never got thrown out once. He's an amazing man, presided over 2 dynasties. And I got to meet his grandson, Connie Mack III, who was a senator from the state of Florida. And he said when people would come up to him, they wanted to know about his grandfather more than they wanted to know about what it was like to be a senator. So the Philadelphia A's really had 2 great dynasties. Matt presided over both of them. He learned how to lose for long periods of time as well as win. He just had great character, and he tried to raise these young players to be more than baseball players. He was way ahead of his time in leadership. So that was one of the most amazing experiences was meeting. So I'm at a point where I can probably take some questions if anybody's interested. I don't know what's time. Keep going, Joe. Okay. Questions? Yeah, the wrong zoo making cut? No, the reason they didn't is that they had they won in 77 and 78, but they weren't good for 4 years. They had a really bad year. I think it was 79. They just didn't weren't very good. So they actually won twice in a row. But and Bronx Zoo would have taken a whole nother blow. That was the yes. Listen.
Couple comments. One on Mickey Mantle. He's my idol.
Yeah.
I grew up.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I got to watch him. And of course, the thing most people should not know was no adult male. His family had never lived past the age of 39. And he figured he wasn't going to make it past 39 either. So that's got to be part of the reason why he drank so much. The second thing is that Meyer is a member of our chapter. And so we're thrilled to have him in here. The third thing about Bobby Brown is there will be a book of Bobby Brown. I know the gentleman was going to write it. Bobby said, "You not write a book while I'm alive." Those guys think you know. The personal friend of Bobby, they had dinner every week. And Bobby spoke to our
Paul Rogers or Tom Boston. I met both of those guys. When I met Bobby, the family had 2 conditions. Number 1, no photos. Number 2, you can't write this book about him.
Right.
And I kind of fudged on that a little bit because there's an afterword in here about Brown. I went to he died on March 25th of 2021. So he died about a year after I met him. And I went to his service, and you know how they have it, memorial services, they have the running video of a lifetime. He's the only one I've ever seen Joe DiMaggio was walked in front of him, and then he hits a triple to clean up the bases. It was an amazing service. And you could just feel the reverence for him. And that's the point I make it in the afterwards. Sometimes we have these leaders. They're that one person in your life that just makes that huge difference. And we revered it. And that was him. He was that kind of leader. Yes, sir.
2 things. One, Bobby Brown talked to the San Marcos chapter of the winter school. That's some great stories. He came to our national labor meetings in 2014. We got to hear a lot of the stories, really, really nice guy. Yeah. Couple of them. I was just wondering, the way talking about your qualification for a dynasty. The way everything's split up now with all the playoffs and such is really different.
Yeah.
So much different. You had 2 winners, you won the league championship. And to me, it's almost like the Astros are in a dynasty situation now, even though they've only won one World Series, but they've been just, yes, there's no team 1-2 while they're in the World Series all the time.
Right, great point.
I have beaten the World Series teams that have won more than they've lost.
Yeah, between free agency and the multiple levels of playoffs and wild card rounds and all that stuff, it's just hard. It's much harder to get there, be a dynasty year after year. I thought the Astros were going to do it in 2018. I was in right field when Altuve hit that ball that Betts went back to get. He was over 2 feet over the wall, it was right in front of me. Poor guy behind him got thrown out for fan interference.
Yeah.
Well, Joe West couldn't get himself up the baseline fast enough to see it.
Or he didn't miss the call.
And had we had that counted, that game might have turned, and I think that would have put us back
I agree with
into winning that year in 2018, because the Red Sox went in.
you.
Yeah. Yes.
So one thing I've often said that a leader is someone I count who I can, even if I don't agree with them or like them, but I would follow them because, and I think that it's based in trust. So when you talk about authentic, I think that gives you a way to trust, even if you don't like him, you know he's not doing anything behind your back, he's not lying to you and all that.
Right.
But I'd say trust is probably.
Yes, that's part of authenticity, but you're absolutely right. You're not going to get the best out of your players if they don't trust you. Just not going to. I made a study of what I thought was the best dynasty, and then I went on to try and decide who I thought the best player was within the context of a team. And I believe the best baseball dynasty was probably the 1936 to 1939, actually 1941 New York Yankees.
Oh, yeah.
And I came to the conclusion, and again, this is not just personal statistics and sabermetrics, and I think I almost stand alone now on this, but I believe the greatest player ever was Joe DiMaggio. And the reason I say that is in the 3 years before DiMaggio arrived in New York, the Yankees had not made the World Series, 33, 34, and 35. They finished an average of 5 games out. DiMaggio came on in 36 as a rookie. They won 4 out of the next 5. And in the 5 years they won the American League by an average of 15.5 games over the second place team. I view that as a 20 game difference. And when you look at the rosters, they were the same team. Because Bill Dickey was the catcher, Gehrig was the first, Zeri was the short, Zeri was the second, Crissetti was at short, Red Rolfe was the third, and they had this guy named George Selkirk in the outfit. So it was the same team except for Joe DiMaggio. And that team, in the 5 years they won the World Series, they went 20-4 in those 5 years. They were just tremendously dominating. But I believe DiMaggio was the greatest ever. And when you talk to people who saw him play, and there's less and less of them, they would tell you that. They said he had a gear that in big games where he would come on, he would make catches, he would make base running plays. It wasn't just his hitting. I could go on and on about DiMaggio. He was amazing. Yes, sir.
Oh, a couple of things. A wonderful Casey Stengel story is maybe know about Stengel and Bob Serve.
Yeah. So one of us has been traded to Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah,
Good management. That's cool.
Yeah. He and Serve are sitting in the dugout. Serve sitting in the dugout. Stengel comes in and sits down and looks ahead. They're kind of both looking the same way. And Stengel says, "I don't know if you know this, but one of us has been traded to Kansas City." That's how Bob Serve found out he was traded to Kansas City. Yes, sir. Yeah. That's tough. They won in 42, 44, and 46. The Gas House game was great. They won in 31 and 34. They were great teams, but they never won 2 in a row. And my publisher gave me a page.
Oh,
That's the reality here. Is that, and my first draft was 105,000 words, and they said, "Oh no, we want 70,000." So I had to cut a third of this book out from its original, and I had to take Dynasty. I had to take the McGraw Giants out. Yeah, but they were, to me, I had to take. I wasn't going to make the page list. I wasn't gonna get the book published if I didn't do that. And they're fascinating, but I thought that they were probably the least interesting of all the teams. Yeah,
What about some 71 to 75 age?
they're in there. Yeah. The Charlie Finley A's from 71 to 75 won 3 in a row. And they're one of the very few, I think the only non-Yankee team to ever win 3 in a row.
Big 3 really good team.
Right, and they did it in spite of their owner, Charlie Finley.
And then Chelsea.
So those guys bonded together. He was a common enemy. I don't know, in the same series night that the clip we saw of the Mets and the Reds, the A's went out to play the Mets in that 1973 World Series. And the A's had a second baseman named Mike Andrews, who fumbled 2 plays at second base to lose a game in extra innings. Finley kicked him off the team right after the game, tried to get him to sign an affidavit that said he was hurt. And
What?
that he was hurt, he was injured. And the players found out about it. The next game, they all had Mike Andrews patches on their shoulders, and the commissioner got involved, and it just really got ugly. And what Finley did at the end is when they won, he got them a World Series ring that looks like a, middle school ring. Because, those things are supposed to have diamonds. It was like the worst World Series ring, which further drove a wedge between he and his team. When free agency came in 1976, nobody wanted to play Charlie Clinton. He did a great job putting the team together in the 60s. He built it. But when it came time, when players had options to go to other places, nobody wanted to play for him. And that was the end of the year.
Screwed up his Catfish Hunter deal by not paying the insurance.
Yeah, he had a Catfish Hunter was probably the best pitcher of his era next to present company. No, he was very, very good. And he had some kind of life insurance premium as part of his compensation. Finley would do that. Instead of paying people just regular salary, he'd come up with strange ways to pay them with cars and houses and all kinds of crazy stuff. And he missed a payment. And by then, Marvin Miller had negotiated salary arbitration for the players. And they were able to go to salary arbitration. And the arbitrator ruled that Finley had to pay that bonus. So, yeah.
Well, he did let him catfish that.
He did. You know what else he tried to do? He tried to change Vida Blue's name too.
True Blue.
True Blue. And he tried to control everything. He told the announcers to use his name, all this crazy stuff. Unbelievable. It's all unbelievable.
So since you are a lawyer,
Yeah.
what about between players and the owner, especially starting last year when they should have been able to start playing and playing more games than 60 and it just fell apart, and then the negotiations down and how things have gone? And
Yeah.
you have an opinion or a feeling or?
I don't know. I mean, I think everybody knew there was going to be a deal done that the teams, the big revenue driver now are the TV contracts. And there's a minimum number of games that have to be played for the teams to get their full payment. And it's not 162, it's something like 140 or 139. So the owners had all this, they had a cushion that they knew about going in. And they took advantage of. And I knew that at some point they were going to get back together and work it out. Jackie Robinson's 75th anniversary of his integrating baseball was going to be April 15th. And that was actually the 100th birthday of Rachel Robinson, Jackie's wife. So Major League Baseball wasn't going to let April 15th go by without playing. So I think they knew all along that they were going to get there. I always thought they were so close. Some of these issues they just seemed to be pretty straightforward and could have been worked out if they had to earlier. But I think a lot of it was the TV revenue issue. Yes, sir.
When you mentioned DiMaggio, it reminds me of an interesting earlier said the history of the game. 3 people have done this. DiMaggio was one of the 3. In your first 4 years of the league, you had 500 RBIs. 3 people have done DiMaggio, one of the 3. And they want to take a quick test of the year. In the first 4 years playing, they had 500 RBIs. You guys have done it. DiMaggio was one. Good wins. The latest is one of those.
Who holds?
Yes. There you go. Well done, guys.
DiMaggio, we all know about his 56-game hitting streak in 1941. Well, he went on to hit in 16 out of his next 17, so he really had 72 out of 73. And that year he had 622 plate appearances, struck out 13 times.
Whoa.
13. I mean, he was unbelievable. One of my favorite Joe DiMaggio stories is he's in the 1936 World Series against the Giants in the Polo Grounds. And if you know the Polo Grounds, there's that big gap in center field where they bring in big trucks and stuff. And FDR is in the crowd, and the game's been won already. It's 8-0, 9-0. And the announcer says, "Okay, everybody needs to get out of the way because we're going to take the president, FDR, out of the stadium." And so it kind of gets the timing gets messed up. And the last out of that inning, DiMaggio has to run down a ball into center field. And he runs up those steps. If you've ever seen Polo Grounds, there's those steps out in center field. He was going so fast, he ran up the steps, got to the top, and he heard this amazing applause behind him. Well, FDR was coming out of the field in his limousine, of course, open air at the time. And he looks down, and FDR is looking up at him and salutes him. And it's just one of these great moments of Americana. There's FDR and Joe DiMaggio in the middle of the Depression, when we're staring down war, and it's just amazing. Some of the baseball is that way. It's so us. It's so a part of us, and you can explain so much of history by sort of talking about baseball. It's remarkable. Yes.
The extension of DiMaggio's streak, what you just talked about there, when you think that Ted Williams hit 406 that year and did not win the MVP award. Right. DiMaggio that the MVP award. Now I thought maybe that thought about it was maybe because it was the New York press that so much of the advantage that DiMaggio had there.
That was part of it. The other thing was the Boston press, who did not like Williams, and he was not real popular among the press, and that was part of that. Yeah.
If on the ground, tell you about going to Korea with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, he went to he was in Korea when Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe came to there and to Tokyo. Actually came into Tokyo and then went to Korea on her honeymoon. And he was with them on their honeymoon. And then she went around to like 10 different areas to give speeches to soldiers. And there were like 100,000 soldier crowds that she spoke to. And she came back and to DiMaggio and said, "Wow, you wouldn't believe the feeling of the adulation of a big crowd cheering for you." DiMaggio said, "Yeah, I have."
And there's only one doctor that she would allow give her a vaccination in the butt.
Wow. That story was, he took them up there, it's going to be crowded. 4 hours to get the hotel to Jericho.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Pat, I had a question. I'm sure everybody in this room knows that this is the 30-year anniversary of the first World Series champion outside the United States, Blue Jays, and they won back-to-back. And in '91, they lost the ALCS to the Twins, and then '94 was '94. What do you think about that?
They're close. They won 2 in a row. They won in '92 and '93. But they weren't great for a long period of time. They kind of highlighted those 2 years. They were close. And that's the problem. They had to draw tough lines. They were one of the ones that was toughest. The Blue Jays.
Yeah.
They were really good. Joe Carter.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Real proud of announcements.
Yeah.
During that time.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
As a longtime fan and student of the game, as you view the game right now, the way later situation is, and the commissioner and his viewpoints, his actions, how do you see moves like the BLM on the mound, social justice trying to band together to do that, taking the All-Star game out of Atlanta because of political reasons? Do you see this as the way the two sides are working together, or is there a concerted effort?
Baseball has always been controversial since the 1860s. There's always been something going I hear you on the social part. I mean, that everybody has their own opinion on that. Economically, it seems to be doing as well as it's ever been, you know, now with TV money, and the players and how well they're known. But yeah, the advertising, I can't get close to. I don't like it at all. But young people, I'm told, don't mind that. In fact, it really works for people to advertise that way. And I'm 60 now, and so I'm starting to, you know, I have a different attitude on things than I once did. But you know, the greatest thing about baseball is the owners were never able to kill it. And they've tried a bunch of times. But when you look at the games in the 50s, if you go to a St. Louis Browns game in 1953, and there'd be 1,500 people in the crowd in the stadium. And I don't know, the fan interest and the television money and just the media and everything now is just amazing. So I tend to try and keep all that in perspective when I see social grandstanding going on. The game is maybe as good as it's been.
Anybody? Go ahead. Go ahead.
The so-called letter that became public recently. It basically.
The Nothing Burger.
Hmm?
The Nothing Burger? Are you talking about that letter? Bill gets it. Go ahead. You talking about the Yankee letter? The Nothing Burger.
Somebody, we still have Altuve booed. Even Correa, Minnesota, got booed in the Yankees game. I mean, it's just such an example of how prevalent the cheating is in baseball. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to guys about that. I asked Bobby Brown about that. He said, if you were commissioner, what would you have done about sign stealing? He said, I would have told them to change their signs.
Yeah, there you go. Games. On one from here, the picture of the one second. That for the 2 games in LA, they didn't have any computer camera.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yep, right. Right. Yeah, I know it's and it's there. This is the first example of sign stealing in 1905. The Philadelphia A's got caught wire on third base coach.
That's right.
Coach's foot.
That's right.
And they were sending in signs from center field scoreboard. Somebody was out there with an telescope, and they were one buzz for a fastball and 2 for a push.
That same one. Recently, in fact, it was several months ago, we had a Saturday meeting, and I was giving a presentation about the shot heard around the world.
Yeah.
You know, the Bobby Thompson thing. And as I did some research to tell the story, I found out that there's a controversy. The Giants, that winning streak that they had, they were cheating, and it became known years later.
He knew what pitch. Thompson knew what pitch was coming.
Well, you still have to.
Still have to do it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but how about all those years ago? The cheating was going on.
Yeah.
That's when things were great. You do it back, and you don't have a lot of civil rights lawyers trying to get in the middle of the game. And I have concerns about the future of the game. They won't let the players get near the fans. That's true. For me, the players need to be around the fans where they can touch them. Right. They guard them. They keep them away. Yep. And maybe that makes them more mysterious, like movie stars, because you can't get their autograph and you can't get to see them. But I mean, there's not that link between the players and fans. Right. That's not a good thing.
I agree.
Well, I remember as recently as Joe's last couple of years, personally walk up and down the right and left field sidelines before games. The shaking hands and signing autographs.
Yeah, but he wasn't staying with the national anthem. Go crawl up underneath when players were asked to come out. Warm up with the bat boy in front of the Bush family.
Wow.
And then he'd run up underneath. Image management.
Yeah, they were, and the income disparity is so much different now. Back in the day, they made basically what everybody else made, and they had to work in the off season. And that up until 1967, the minimum was $7,000. And until Marvin Miller got involved in the players union, I'm a management side labor rule. And I'm one that thinks that Marvin Miller did more for baseball than just about anybody else, because of his ability to get, not only to get free agency, but then not let it go too far. Because he was at a point when they won the Sykes decision, where he could have just, everybody could have been a free agent every year. And he said, no, that's too many. We've got to control this. So he agreed to the 6 year, basically the 6 year rule to free agents.
Read this book, I think. You started in a certain place going, and you met in the middle where you want.
Absolutely.
You wanted them every 2 years or something. Owners wanted every 10 years, and they ended up at 5 or 6, and were the right number of free agents by the man.
Right. But the reserve clause, the old reserve clause, that gave players no leverage whatsoever. And everybody interpreted it to me, well, it keeps you in perpetuity with the team. Once you sign a contract, the only way you're going to get out of there is if you get traded. And Miller read it and he said, wait a minute, that's not what the language says. It really only applies for the first year. And that's what he was able to do. He was able to convince the arbitrators that that's what it says. And at the end of the day, he prevailed on it.
Anyone else? Well, Ted, you want to tell everybody how to get your book?
I've got books with me. If anybody's interested, I'll inscribe them. They're $25. They're also on Amazon. Buy them for your friends and family and holidays and everything. This has been a labor of love for me, and I didn't do this to make money. I just absolutely love this game and love studying it. And people I've met, it's like anything else. It's not people. It's people that you meet out in there. So many of you I've never met, and just even coming to this group has been a great experience. So, but I've got plenty of books here for those of you that are interested.
And you've been a member of SABR this chapter for how long now?
Not very long, about 3 years, I think.
You said you're going to start coming to the meetings now?
Yes.
Is that what you told me?
I did. I'll bring books.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Ted. We have a trivia contest tonight from Herb. But before we do that, Arlene, are you there?
I am.
Can you give us about a 2 or 3 minute preview of next month? 2 or 3 minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, I didn't prepare anything, but
No, just
it
tell
is
us what you're gonna talk about.
it's a behind the scenes look at some of the superstars from the late 70s, early 80s of baseball, and my time with the Philadelphia Phillies, who I consider a late 70s, early 80s dynasty. And I think a lot of people would agree with me about that. And just working for the team and doing promotions and working alongside the players, and just a peek about what it's like to be involved in baseball in that respect. And there are some anecdotes in my book. So of course I'm going to be pushing my book as well. And it's going to be a fun talk. I was a member of the Phillies Hot Pants Patrol to begin with, and then they put me on the promotions team. So I got to hobnob with just about every superstar from the late 70s, early 80s, because they all came in for big promotions that the Phillies did, charity works and things. And it was a fun time. I've got lots of great photos for you and in my PowerPoint. So it'll be fun and light and not so statistic heavy.
And you are here local, right? You'll be here in person, right?
Yes, I am local.
Oh, right.
So this won't be a Zoom thing. She'll be here live. So thank you, Arlene.
With my original uniform. I won't be wearing it, but I will have it.
With her original uniform. Thank you, Arlene.
Okay.
The trivia contest today, Herb has paper handouts, but we also have all the questions on a PowerPoint. So those of you on Zoom, we don't have to read the questions to you. They will be right here. So, Herb, Vice President Herb, take it away for the trivia contest.
You're unmuted again. Yes, do this.
Oh, 2 to 2 and a 6. All right.
Microphone and click it. Okay.
Thank you for the quick introduction. Basically, a lot of you know that I am a big fan of minor league baseball. I travel around the country almost every summer. Can everybody hear me, first of all?
Sure.
So much. There you go.
Keep saying unmuted for some reason.
So I decided we needed a little something different with our trivia contest. So I've developed a quiz that's has all the things to do with the minor league baseball. And a lot of it is stadiums. A lot of it is just locations, history, and all that. So it's quite a mixture. So I'm going to go ahead, pass out these paper copies. And what uniform is that, Earth? It is from Asheville, North Carolina, or the Astros affiliates. It is the special one they do for Latino baseball. I think that's how it's pronounced, but you come on us. And if
So how long do you want to give everybody for each question? About 2 minutes? That's that about enough time? Okay, all right, here,
some of the questions are more.
which one?
With that one that was just showing the state.
You come out?
Amsterdam.
Oh, yeah, that's our chapter.
Yeah.
Didn't Mike say we could do that? And have like bumper logos or stickers with our chapter logo when we first developed? Didn't he say we would buy?
It's our logo. We would buy it too. We would buy it. If you get it up, sure. It's
Here you go.
Bob, can you hear us?
I'm not gonna get it even right.
No, some of these are
Zoom.
Bob Stevens is on the Zoom.
We would buy one.
It says it, Zoom meeting.
Whether or not you get some stickers or not. Okay.
Yeah, some of you are gonna know the answers. Don't yell them out, please.
Bob's still there? Hold on a second. Bob, are you there?
I think he left.
Not a minute ago.
Yeah, he might have left. Well, we can email them and ask.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Question 1.
Basically, if it says there's a total of 35 points on this trivia contest, if it says 2 points like on this one, you need both names to get 2 points. Okay?
I think head start on this one. I'm cheating if I would.
I know this is a tough one.
Odorizzi's
You
hurt.
probably go on pretty fast on this one.
Yeah.
Odorizzi's hurt.
Odorizzi now hurt.
Too good to be true.
Yeah.
How good he was pitching.
Don't need that.
Let me see.
Okay.
Wonder if they're gonna blame that extra day. I'm gonna take off. Thank you, Larry. All right.
See you guys next time.
Get your name tag, Larry.
Just ran it today.
Hey, Larry, yeah.
Probably gonna lose it fast.
We can always go back. If you guys, if you guys on the Zoom need me to go back on a question, we can do that. So just let me know.
Paragraph number 4, is that active or in history?
That's current.
Current.
Yes. Yeah, because there's been plenty.
Yeah, it's been passed.
What would we lose our city on? Never should be, never. Oh, that's what I mean. What's that? Better. So, yeah, we need something. I feel like going. This. Very good. Make sure you have a clear policy. All right, these records. You don't have to do. It will go on, but. Yeah. So that's so around this. I want to get. Like, yeah, she also takes some good on this one. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Right. I mean, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, it's like you're football team. That's very nice. So I keep it there. Well, they look at the main group, so. Say, so make that, right. Oh, maybe. Like I look like. I don't know about this. I love it. We would take. Something wrong. Sorry. I'm getting. Which goes against everything else. Busy, being passion, college. And it's not usual. It's footnotes aren't really known anymore. I mean. I saw a study, Sacramento, Illinois. Cut these suckers out. Which only manage. It goes on. She would. Oh. Better be smaller. Yeah, I'm not just. Oh, God. Okay, one part. So that's what. Yes, I do. Get on the subway, always. Right. I mean,
So now they're in a rain delay?
Yeah.
So now they're in a rain delay. That's funny.
Yeah.
Tie game, rain delay.
I don't know, Ritzy got Bell covering first base. Cardinals.
Yeah, that's right.
Ahead and stalled behind.
Hey, come on.
All the chicken.
They gotta go solve.
All right, Herb, is everybody ready? What you think? Everybody ready?
Go back. Go back.
Got answers. Everybody on Zoom ready? Anybody need more time on Zoom?
What t-shirt?
All right, ready? Okay, the first question. Name the Houston Astros AAA franchise formerly known as the Skeeters. Hopefully, most people here got it. Space Cowboys.
Sugarland Space Cowboys.
Get 2 points, you need to say Sugarland Space Cowboys.
That's where I messed up.
So if it's just the Space Cowboys, you get 1 point. If you said Sugarland, you get 1 point. If you said both, you get 2. Number 2, name the AA franchise of the Tampa Bay Rays located in Alabama.
All right, this.
Montgomery Biscuits. Okay. You said both Montgomery and Biscuits. AA. I was just there in April. It's a nice ballpark. It's right downtown. It used to be the Tigers. Farm club for quite a while.
You said Montgomery Biscuits?
Yes, Montgomery Biscuits.
So biscuits and gravy now.
Number 3, name this AA affiliate of the Angels, actually located in Madison, Alabama. You need both team names. Consistent 2 words each. I'll let you try. Anybody have any ideas? Sure. It's near there.
Green Gray.
Well, I say. Alabama. It used to be in Mobile, this franchise. They moved the franchise from Mobile to Huntsville, Alabama. So it's the Rocket City Trash Pandas.
Rocket City Trash Pandas.
Ballpark's only a couple years old. I was there named Rocket City, named after the, because in Huntsville, they have a Rocket Center. Trash Pandas. Raccoons.
So no more Huntsville Stars, correct?
No.
Okay.
Well, this was the team that was in Biloxi. I mean, in Mobile previously, which was the Bears. And they moved just there like 3 years ago. And the ballpark's only about 3 years
Some
old.
of you trust to do it, just let's do it, some you don't. Yeah.
Okay, number 4, name the only affiliated minor league franchise located in Canada.
Vancouver.
Vancouver.
Canadians. Just so great.
Vancouver Canadians. And I'll be there in July on the.
July.
Don't sit in third base cycle, some of the other. Goes down. Something that's turn play.
Okay, it's the Vancouver Canadians. Okay. Number 5.
No,
Albuquerque Isotopes are an affiliate in the Pacific Coast League. Name the TV show that is the origin of the Isotopes name.
Simpsons.
Simpsons. Yeah.
Hopefully you were listening, Mike. I gave you that.
Number 6. The Albuquerque team was known as the Dukes beginning in 1972. Many Major League future stars passed through this franchise as the team won multiple PCL championships. Name its Major League affiliations during this period.
Los Angeles Dodgers.
Los Angeles Dodgers. I know Steve Garvey played there.
Brothers.
Ron Say, I know for sure played there during that time.
They developed a baseball game and other.
And a lot of the other stars that came through a little bit about the 70s.
Followed it, so like, yeah.
Franklin Stutz.
Ron Say.
Ron Say, Stubbs run the middle race. I'm not sure what happened. Now, the reason I've got that on there is I'm going to go to Albuquerque this July.
Didn't want to be made.
The Isotopes are the Colorado Rockies. Yes. The SABR National Convention will be held in Baltimore this August. Name the South Atlantic League affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles owned by Cal Ripken Jr.
Aberdeen Ironbirds.
I say it again.
Aberdeen Ironbirds.
You'll remember me next meeting anyways, Mike, it's all right. This is 5 years to learn.
And they are, it will be at Aberdeen to see
Ironbirds.
the Nashville team. Did that all for the convention.
PCI partnership.
The New York Mets AA affiliate of the Eastern League is located in Binghamton, New York. What is the team known as?
Bulldog.
That's. Anybody know that?
It's gotta be some crazy name.
It's a 2-word name.
Valley Cats. No, that's
That was truck facilities. The Rumble Ponies. And I'm hoping to be there in September. Okay, another New York Mets affiliate is known as the Cyclones, based on a famous amusement park ride, name the city name used for this.
Oh, yeah. Only out.
I still that eventually now.
Simple. It's the name of the team is Brooklyn. Brooklyn Cyclones. Okay, number 10, Jackie Robinson Ballpark was built in 1914 and renamed for the Hall of Famer in 1989. According to the team's website, it is the fourth oldest ballpark still in use in professional baseball. It is typically identified as the oldest ballpark used in minor league baseball. The team is part of the Florida State League, named the team.
Daytona.
Close. Vero Beach. No, let's get very close. It's just Daytona. And it's the Tortugas.
This is the Turtles, not the Dragons.
I think it might used to have been the Dragons. That's you. But no, the
1 point for
no, it was half. No, I think it's the Dayton Dragons. Maybe. That might be what you're.
Yes.
Okay. Number 11, this Astros affiliate plays at McCormick Field, constructed in 1924. This is the third oldest ballpark used and affiliated in minor league baseball. Name the team.
They play the Kannapolis Cannonballers all last week. Okay. It's the Fredericksburg with the.
Asheville three.
It's the Asheville Tourists.
Asheville two.
Or you can use this.
How are they getting these old ballparks like this up to modern requirements?
Asheville, well, it's not, they're not totally up to modern. They have both Daytona Beach, Daytona and Asheville have operated their stadiums.
Are they A-ball?
This is high A. And yeah, and Daytona just dropped.
Low A.
Yeah.
They have lower standards like Sugar Land would have to have, but they still.
Right, they don't have to have as many seats. I don't think their lighting's quite as.
The lighting, I think.
Now, the field in Asheville is not right downtown, but it's in the major part, in the central part.
By the way, heard, future son-in-law in October, now the only former member of the Houston Babies playing professional baseball. But the Kannapolis Cannonballers.
Yeah.
Is that promotion?
No, that's okay. I hope a lot of you got some of these. The state of Texas has a number of minor league affiliates located in the Pacific Coast Leagues and the Texas League. Name the cities associated with each of the following teams. Close. Sod Poodles.
Amarillo.
Chihuahuas.
El Paso.
The Express.
Brown Rock.
Rocktown.
Midland. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's my.
Midland.
Yeah, I know.
Missions.
San
Antonio.
Fresco.
Hopefully those were Gibbies.
Well, you get 1 point each.
Yes, 1 point each for those. Okay, and the last question is the Texas League now has 5 affiliates located outside of the state of Texas. We have 5 teams in Texas still. There's 5 teams that are not located. in Texas.
Arkansas.
Arkansas what?
Travelers.
Travelers. Right, that's 1.
Get 1 point. Oklahoma City.
No, Oklahoma City's AAA.
Tulsa.
New Mexico.
Tulsa what? Thrillers. Okay, that's 2.
That's no.
It's 3 more.
New Mexico.
So I'll give you a hint. One's in Arkansas, one's in Kansas, and one's in Missouri. Springfield. What's their?
Springfield Cardinals.
Cardinals. There you go. Springfield Cardinals. Okay, 2 more. One in Kansas is relatively new. They moved from New Orleans.
Oh, is that?
Zephyrs. Well, they were the Zephyrs. Wichita. Nickname is the Wind Surge. What's it called? Windsor?
Windsor, Kansas.
Yes, Windsor, Kansas. And there's one like that.
So New Orleans doesn't have it. No, the Zephyrs are their only one. I grew up in New Orleans. That's the only baseball they had in the whole city was the Zephyrs game.
So there's no.
That's surprising.
There's no affiliated in Louisiana at all. There's one more. It's in Arkansas. It's Little Rock's to Arkansas.
Fayetteville Oilers.
Did you say Fayetteville? It's close to Fayetteville.
There you go.
It's a Kansas City Rose Farm Club. It's the Northwest Arkansas Naturals.
It's not big.
Does anybody need me to repeat any of the answers?
Wow.
I would guess maybe started. How many had you been on? I had 10.
13 and a half.
We got 16. 16.
Whoa,
16.
oh, next meeting.
Oh, okay. Any more than 16. It's very good.
Anybody on Zoom more than 16?
Great job, Lloyd. Good.
Yeah, I only had 12 points.
Hey, Chris, you want me to stop sharing?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Hi, Herb.
Who you got next month? Who won? So you're writing it for next month. Congratulations. Next month.
Your meeting.
Well, what's the question?
I'm for your reverse. Don said,
We love guys. I count 9.
All right, everybody, great meeting tonight. Thank you all for coming. And we'll see you on Monday, June 20th. Okay, Monday, June
Very good
20th.
meeting.
Right here. Same place. Arlene will be our featured speaker. And she's gone. Okay, so we will see you next time. Thank you,
Very good
Ted.
meeting.
All right, have a great day, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You did well.
so, okay.